I want to share some important insights about extended fasting that everyone should understand. The concept itself is surprisingly simple, yet many people tend to overcomplicate it. Often, the simplest things produce the most powerful results, and fasting is a perfect example of that. If you really stop and think about it, it's remarkable that simply choosing not to eat for a period of time can trigger such significant changes throughout the body. If you've never experimented with fasting before, it's definitely worth trying so you can experience its benefits firsthand. To truly appreciate what fasting does, it helps to compare it with its complete opposite, snacking. When you look at the effects frequent snacking has on the body, the impact can be far more damaging than most people realize. In fact, among the many habits that negatively affect health, constant snacking may be one of the worst because of how it influences insulin levels. Every time you snack, insulin rises. When this happens repeatedly throughout the day, insulin stays elevated for long periods, setting off a chain reaction of problems throughout the body. This chronic elevation can contribute to numerous health issues that build over time. One thing I've come to realize is that true healing often doesn't come from eating more frequently. Many people have been taught that food is the primary tool for recovery and wellness. While nutritious food is certainly important, there are times when allowing the body to rest from digestion may be even more beneficial. Sometimes the most effective way to support healing is simply by not eating for a while. For years, people have been told that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. I used to believe and promote that idea myself until I learned otherwise. Then there are bedtime snacks for children, after school snacks, and the common advice that skipping a meal is somehow harmful. It's worth asking where these ideas originated. Much of this messaging has been heavily influenced by industries that profit when people eat more often. Ironically, snacking usually has the opposite effect of what people expect. Instead of satisfying hunger, it often increases it. When you eat a small snack, insulin rises, and after a short period, blood sugar can fall again. About an hour or so later, you're often left feeling hungry once more. Rather than reducing cravings, frequent snacking can keep hunger active throughout the day. Because of this cycle, snacking doesn't truly solve issues related to low blood sugar. Instead, it can help maintain that roller coaster of highs and lows. Over time, repeated insulin spikes may contribute to insulin resistance, making it more difficult for the body to burn stored fat efficiently. Another common effect is fatigue. Many people notice they feel sleepy after eating. While a snack may temporarily improve mood or reduce irritability, that effect often fades quickly. As blood sugar drops again, the feelings of frustration, low energy, or irritability can return. Throughout history, some of the world's greatest thinkers have recognized the value of fasting. The ancient physician Hippocrates famously suggested that eating while sick may actually feed the illness rather than help the body recover. Ancient Greek philosophers also saw fasting as a valuable practice. Pythagoras reportedly required his students to fast because he believed it improved mental clarity and sharpened thinking. Other influential thinkers, such as Plato and Aristotle, also supported fasting as a tool for improving the mind. Centuries later, Benjamin Franklin referred to rest and fasting as some of the most powerful forms of medicine available. Mark Twain even suggested that short periods without food could sometimes do more for an average sick person than many treatments or physicians. Now let's talk about body fat. Most people see fat as something they simply want to get rid of, but it's important to understand why the body stores it in the first place. Fat developed as a survival mechanism during times when food wasn't always available. It serves as a highly efficient energy reserve, allowing humans to survive through periods of scarcity. When people say they have a slow or damaged metabolism, what they're often describing is actually a body that has become extremely efficient at conserving energy. The body learns to operate on less fuel while protecting its stored reserves. Fat is essentially the body's insurance policy against starvation. This understanding reveals an important truth about fat loss. You don't remove stored fat by constantly adding more food. Instead, you create conditions similar to those that originally caused the body to rely on its fat reserves. It's important to distinguish fasting from actual starvation. The key difference is control. During fasting, you are making a conscious decision not to eat, and food remains available if you choose to have it. Starvation, on the other hand, occurs when food is unavailable and circumstances are controlling the situation. When people use fasting strategically, They're voluntarily creating a temporary environment that encourages the body to tap into stored energy. That's why prolonged fasting can be such a powerful tool for reducing body fat and supporting overall health. Now let's cover the first critical point about extended fasting. When fasting, your primary beverages should be water, tea, or coffee. However, supplementation can still be extremely important. Modern diets often leave people deficient in key nutrients, and although the body becomes highly efficient at conserving nutrients during a fast, existing deficiencies may still be present. Certain trace minerals, electrolytes, and vitamins can become particularly important. For that reason, I often recommend focusing on electrolyte support along with B vitamins. Depending on your situation, nutrients such as vitamin D and vitamin C may also be beneficial. What you generally want to avoid are products that can interrupt the fasting process, such as branched chain amino acids and similar supplements that may stimulate metabolic pathways associated with feeding. The goal is to allow the body to remain in a true fasting state while still maintaining adequate nutritional support where necessary. One thing you should avoid during a prolonged fast is consuming small snacks or supplements that contain calories. Some fasting programs encourage this approach, but I don't recommend it because it can interfere with one of the most valuable processes that fasting activates: autophagy. Autophagy isn't a physical object or substance. It's a natural state the body enters where it begins breaking down and recycling old, damaged, and dysfunctional proteins. Think of it as the body's built-in cleanup and repair system. Among all the methods available, fasting is one of the strongest triggers for activating this process. When autophagy ramps up, the body starts clearing out cellular waste, damaged proteins, and even harmful pathogens. It also switches on genes associated with longevity, resilience, and long-term survival. Another major benefit is that it helps remove damaged mitochondria, the energy-producing structures inside cells. Since mitochondrial dysfunction is linked to many serious diseases, including cancer, this cleanup process is incredibly important. The body can recycle proteins that have accumulated damage over time, including those associated with age-related conditions and chronic inflammation. This includes abnormal protein buildup linked to cognitive decline, as well as damaged proteins that result from long-term metabolic stress. Fasting gives the body an opportunity to remove these dysfunctional components and replace them with healthier ones. One of the most remarkable effects many people notice during prolonged fasting is a dramatic reduction in inflammation. This is one reason fasting has attracted attention for supporting individuals dealing with autoimmune-related issues. The body isn't just breaking down damaged muscle proteins. It is renewing and optimizing proteins involved in countless metabolic functions and biological pathways. For that reason, it's best to keep things simple during a fast. Stick with water, tea, coffee, and essential supplements. Avoid adding anything unnecessary that could interrupt the fasting state and reduce the benefits you're trying to achieve. Another important factor is hydration. For most people, drinking at least 2.5 liters of water daily during a prolonged fast is a good target. Some people practice dry fasting, but that's a completely different approach and not something I typically recommend for the average person. Water fasting is generally the safer and more practical option. Interestingly, when the body burns stored fat, it can actually generate metabolic water as a byproduct. That's a fascinating topic on its own, but even with that process occurring, it's still important to consume enough water throughout your fast. When fasting begins, the body first starts using stored glycogen, which is essentially stored sugar found primarily in the liver and muscles. Glycogen holds a significant amount of water, so as those stores are depleted, a large amount of fluid is released and eliminated. This is one reason people often notice rapid weight loss during the first few days of fasting. However, along with that water loss comes the loss of important electrolytes. Replacing these electrolytes is critical. In fact, one of the biggest mistakes people make during extended fasts is neglecting electrolyte intake. Without adequate electrolytes, serious problems can develop. People may experience weakness, dizziness, fainting episodes, abnormal heart rhythms, and in extreme situations, even more severe cardiovascular complications. Electrolytes include more than just sodium. Sodium and chloride are essential, but so are potassium, magnesium, calcium, and other important minerals. If you begin noticing muscle weakness, fatigue, cramps, or unusual tiredness, it may be a sign that your electrolyte levels need attention. Ensuring adequate intake of sea salt and other electrolyte sources can make a significant difference in how you feel during a fast. Now let's talk about what happens when the fasting period ends. This stage is often referred to as refeeding, and it's one of the most important parts of the entire process. Here we're discussing prolonged fasting, not typical intermittent fasting. We're talking about fasts that may last 48 hours, 72 hours, 5 days, 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or even longer under appropriate circumstances. Some people choose to perform longer fasts several times throughout the year as part of their overall health strategy. Before continuing, it's important to mention situations where prolonged fasting may not be appropriate. Pregnancy, breastfeeding, and eating disorders, such as anorexia, are examples where fasting should generally be avoided unless under proper medical supervision. Now, when it's time to break a prolonged fast, the biggest mistake you can make is immediately eating a large meal. Your digestive system has been resting, and your body needs time to transition back into processing food. It's especially important to avoid jumping straight into refined carbohydrates and sugary foods. After an extended fast, consuming large amounts of sugar can create rapid shifts in electrolyte balance, particularly involving potassium. Since potassium plays a major role in glucose storage and cellular function, these sudden changes can create unnecessary stress on the body and may lead to serious imbalances. Instead, begin with something small and easy to digest. A modest portion of salad, a little egg, or another light whole food option is a much better choice. After a few hours, you can gradually add more foods such as nuts, avocado, or other nutrient-dense options. The key is to ease your way back into eating rather than overwhelming your digestive system all at once. I learned this lesson the hard way. After one extended fast, I made the mistake of sitting down to a huge meal and eating far more than I should have. It seemed like a good idea at the time, but my body quickly reminded me otherwise. The result was significant digestive discomfort, extreme fatigue, and a clear demonstration of exactly what not to do when ending a prolonged fast. After making that mistake, I immediately realized I never wanted to repeat it. Sometimes the best lessons come from experience, and if I can help others avoid the same problems, that's even better. Another important point applies if you're doing a prolonged fast lasting more than 72 hours. During an extended fast, your body produces large amounts of ketones. This is completely normal and part of the process, but ketones can make your system more acidic. That's not necessarily harmful, but it's something to be aware of. Because of this, adding apple cider vinegar during a long fast may not be the best idea. While many people use it for various health purposes, combining it with an already highly ketogenic state can sometimes increase acidity further. For some individuals, this may lead to symptoms such as a strong, noticeable heartbeat, a pounding pulse that becomes especially obvious at night, difficulty sleeping, changes in breathing patterns, or the feeling that it's harder to get a satisfying breath. If that happens, a small amount of baking soda mixed with water may help support balance. Even something as little as 1/8 of a teaspoon can be enough. This may also be useful for people who notice symptoms related to increased uric acid levels. It's important to understand that uric acid isn't automatically a bad thing. In fact, it functions as a powerful antioxidant within the bloodstream. During fasting, uric acid levels often rise naturally. Most people won't experience any issues, but individuals who are prone to gout may occasionally notice flare-ups, particularly when first starting extended fasting. For the majority of people, however, this tends to be temporary and manageable. The fifth point is what you should do after the fast is over. Rather than returning to the same eating habits that may have contributed to health problems in the first place, consider transitioning into a healthy ketogenic lifestyle combined with intermittent fasting. The purpose of fasting is to help reverse many of the negative effects associated with excessive sugar, processed foods, and high carbohydrate diets. If you immediately return to those same foods, you're likely undoing some of the progress you've worked so hard to achieve. A healthy ketogenic approach helps extend many of the benefits you've gained during the fasting period while making future fasting easier. The sixth point involves something known as the dawn phenomenon. This occurs when blood sugar levels rise early in the morning, often between about 5 a.m. and 8 a.m. Many people become concerned when they notice this because they haven't eaten anything, yet their glucose readings are higher than expected. The reason is that the sugar isn't coming from food, it's being produced by the liver. This often happens in people who still have some degree of insulin resistance. Even though fasting can significantly improve insulin sensitivity, reversing insulin resistance completely takes time. Depending on the individual, it may require several months or even longer before the body fully restores normal metabolic function. If you experience the dawn phenomenon, don't panic. In many cases, it's simply evidence that the body is still working through underlying insulin resistance. It doesn't necessarily mean the fasting process isn't working. One simple strategy is to go for a long walk in the morning. Physical activity helps the body use that extra glucose as fuel. The important thing to remember is that this sugar isn't coming from a donut, a soda, or a high-carb meal. Your liver is producing it internally, which is a completely different situation. Over time, as insulin sensitivity improves, this issue often becomes less noticeable. Some people make the mistake of seeing a temporary rise in blood sugar and concluding that fasting is harmful. They stop the process before giving their body enough time to adapt. In many cases, that would be the wrong conclusion. Certain natural compounds may also help support healthy insulin function. Ingredients such as berberine and cinnamon are often used to encourage better insulin sensitivity while the body continues healing. The seventh and final point is knowing when and how to approach prolonged fasting itself. Can you jump straight into an extended fast without preparation? Yes, it's possible. However, that doesn't mean you'll feel amazing immediately. If your body has spent years depending primarily on glucose for energy, there will usually be an adjustment period. Many people find it easier to gradually work toward longer fasts by first practicing intermittent fasting for several weeks. This gives the body time to become more flexible in how it produces and uses energy. What's really happening during fasting is a metabolic shift. The body moves away from relying mainly on glucose and begins using stored fat as its primary fuel source. At the same time, it increases ketone production, providing an alternative energy source, especially for the brain. This transition doesn't happen instantly. Your brain cannot efficiently run on fatty acids directly, so it depends heavily on ketones during fasting. Because ketone production takes time to ramp up, you may initially experience mental fog, low energy, irritability, or difficulty concentrating. To make the transition easier, some people use MCT oil or ketone supplements. These can provide temporary support while the body becomes more efficient at producing its own ketones. Eventually, something interesting happens. Hunger begins to fade, energy becomes more stable, mental clarity improves. You start feeling surprisingly good despite not eating. Those are strong signs that your body has successfully adapted to its new fuel source. If you're taking a gradual approach, expect some discomfort during the transition. You may experience hunger waves, cravings, fatigue, or moments where you simply don't feel like yourself. That's normal. The key is understanding that these feelings are usually temporary. As the body learns to access stored fat efficiently, many of those symptoms begin to disappear. There aren't always shortcuts to this process. Sometimes adaptation simply requires patience and persistence.